Hey, if you like what you see, don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that noti bell because it really helps out. The life and story of protagonists in video games can sometimes be the most life-changing experience you could ever have, or the worst, most insufferable and miserable experience that makes you question why you played what you just did. And Arthur Morgan, the protagonist of Red Dead Redemption 2, is without a shadow of a doubt in my mind the former. His story is one that embeds itself deep into the hearts of players, not through grandiosity or absurd feats of supernatural strength, but through a meticulous and intimate betrayal of a man wrestling with his past, his choices, and the cost of loyalty in a world slipping through his fingers. Rarely do we encounter a protagonist so layered, so richly conceived, and so brutally human. The mere act of walking in his boots for the duration of a video game leaves a lasting scar, beautiful, aching, and unforgettable. Arthur is not just a video game character, built for power fantasies or narrative convenience. He is a man who bleeds, weeps, and contemplates the morality of his existence, all while trudging through the morally complex and decaying twilight of the Old West. Rockstar Games didn't just craft a world that stuns with its visual fidelity and systemic complexity, they created a soul within it. That soul is Arthur Morgan. His journey is not merely a backdrop for the unfolding Red Dead Redemption 2's open-world sandbox, rather the entire game functions as a slow-burning, emotionally harrowing chronicle of a man who over the course of a single campaign evolves more than just most video game protagonists do in entire franchises. From a fiercely loyal enforcer of the Vanderland gang to a man burdened by his conscience, slowly awakening to the consequences of his choices, Arthur Morgan becomes a mirror to our own ideals, regrets, and redemptions. He is the very embodiment of a flawed hero, harsh when he needs to be, violent when the world demands it, but increasingly gentle and introspective as the reality of mortality begins to claw at him. In the world of Red Dead Redemption 2, nothing is guaranteed except for the eventual collapse of everything Arthur holds dear, and watching him come to terms with that inevitability is nothing short of devastating. It's this layered, emotionally dense character arc that elevates Arthur Morgan beyond the confines of digital narrative and cements him as not just one of gaming's greatest protagonists, but as a fictional character that belongs in the pantheon of great storytelling. What Rockstar achieved with Arthur isn't just a feat of game design or script writing, it's an act of storytelling that touches something profoundly human. Players don't just control Arthur, they become him. They feel the weight of his choices, the tremble in his voice as he speaks of regrets, and the subtle hope in his eyes when he begins to believe that maybe, just maybe, there's still time to do one good thing. And when that final ride comes, accompanied by the haunting strains of That's the Way It Is, we're not just saying goodbye to a character, we're saying goodbye to a piece of ourselves. A story like Arthur Morgan's doesn't fade when the credits roll, it lingers, it echoes, and it stays with you long after the dust of the trail has settled. Arthur Morgan's story would not possess the same gravitas if it weren't set against the backdrop of a world teetering on the edge of irrevocable change. The America of Red Dead Redemption 2 is not the lawless frontier playground of traditional Western tales, it is a fading dream, a land caught in a tug-of-war between unbridled wilderness and encroaching civilization. Every muddy trail, snow-bitten mountain pass, smoke-choked industrial town, and tranquil forest whispers the story of a dying age, and it is within this transitional space that Arthur's personal journey takes center stage. This isn't just a setting meant to decorate the game, it's an active force, a crucible that shapes Arthur's worldview and internal conflicts. Rockstar's America is detailed not just in its visual fidelity, but in thematic intent, illustrating the brutal clash between freedom and structure, individualism and societal control, all of which mirror the dualities within Arthur himself. From the moment the player steps into the frozen desolation of Coulter, the tone is clear. This is not a world of invincibility, but one of struggle, survival, and consequence. Nature itself seems to press down on the gang, forcing them to make tough decisions in order to stay alive, and Arthur, the ever-loyal right hand of Dutch Vanderland, is thrust into this fight not merely as a willing participant, but as a product of the world around him. He has never known peace. He has never had the privilege of choosing a different life. He was raised by Dutch, taught to believe in the ideals of freedom and camaraderie, and yet as the world tightens its grip and Dutch begins to fray under the pressure of progress, Arthur begins to see through the lies that once comforted him. The brutal, uncaring beauty of the world surrounding him reflects the chaos within, and every new town, gang hideout, and railroad track laid down by progress serves as another symbol of the life slipping away from Arthur and those he chooses to ride with. What makes this setting so poignant is how seamlessly it integrates with the emotional and psychological development of Arthur's character. The world is not static, it reacts, it breathes, it deteriorates. The Vanderland gang, once a tight-knit family bound by loyalty and shared belief, becomes a microcosm for the shifting tides of the era. As lawmen become more organized, bounty hunters more ruthless, and ordinary folks more distrustful of outlaws, the gang begins to fall apart from within. The once boisterous campfires grow colder, the laughter dimmer, the bonds weaker. Arthur is caught in the eye of the storm, witnessing the unraveling of the only life he's ever known, even as he begins to realize it may not have ever been as noble or as righteous as he was once led to believe. This decline isn't just physical, it is moral, emotional, and spiritual. The world that built Arthur is crumbling, and with it, so is his sense of identity. Yet within this bleak, unforgiving landscape, there are moments of startling beauty. Sunsets that bathe the plains in gold, quiet rides under moonlit skies, and the serene calm of rivers winding through pine-laced valleys. These moments stand in stark contrast to the brutality of Arthur's life, offering brief but powerful instances of peace and clarity. It is in these moments that Arthur finds room to breathe, to reflect, to question, and to finally feel. The world is harsh, yes, but it is also undeniably alive, and that very aliveness seeps into Arthur's soul as he begins to search for meaning beyond the gun. The setting of Red Dead Redemption 2 is not just a place, it is a living, breathing character that shapes every decision Arthur makes. It offers no mercy, no easy answers, but it does offer something that few game worlds ever truly manage to give: context, consequence, and the crushing realization that time waits for no man, not even an outlaw like Arthur Morgan. Few games have ever implemented a morality system with the same level of narrative impact, emotional depth, and spiritual weight as Red Dead Redemption 2. For Arthur Morgan, morality is not a rigid meter that ticks toward arbitrary rewards or punishments. It is the very essence of his evolution. It is the culmination of every interaction, every decision, every whispered confession of guilt, and every act of mercy or brutality. Rockstar doesn't just gamify morality, they embed it into the marrow of the story itself, allowing Arthur's journey to feel intimate, personal, and heartbreakingly consequential. This system doesn't just affect what kind of protagonist the player shapes, it defines what kind of man Arthur becomes when he knows he is dying. Morality is no longer about survival or dominance, it becomes about legacy, and about what you leave behind when your time is up, and what kind of soul departs when death finally comes to collect his due. The power of this system reveals itself most potently as Arthur faces his final days. Diagnosed with tuberculosis, Arthur doesn't simply fall to his knees in despair, he awakens. His illness becomes a crucible through which his deepest regrets and longings bubble to the surface. The player, knowingly or unknowingly, begins to feel the consequences of how they've lived through Arthur. Did you help the widow with her debts? Did you spare the gang members who lost their way? Did you stop to watch the sunrise with a companion or offer a kind word to those in need? These choices don't just define alternate endings, they define Arthur's soul. And nowhere does this come to bear with more staggering beauty than in the final scenes of the game. Whether you achieved high or low honor, the journey to Arthur's end is unforgettable. But for those who walked the more righteous path, like myself, what awaits them is something so deeply moving it transcends the boundaries of gaming itself. In the high honor ending, Arthur does not die a monster. He does not perish with hate in his heart or vengeance in his blood. He dies looking out at the sunrise, at peace with the world he once ran from, the sins he once committed, and the man he's chosen to become. This moment is made transcendent by the sudden soul-piercing inclusion of Stand Unshaken, a song so perfectly composed and placed that it doesn't just accompany Arthur's death, it becomes his requiem. The lyrics echo the pain, the determination, and the defiance Arthur embodies in his final hours. "I stand unshaken amidst the crash of worlds" is not just a line in a song, it is Arthur's last breath, his final act of strength in the face of despair, and his unwavering resolve to die with dignity, not as an outlaw feared by society and those around him, but as a man who found peace within himself. This ending, this combination of Arthur's journey, stands as one of the most emotionally shattering and profound finales ever delivered in the medium. It doesn't rely on spectacle or cinematic excess, it relies on character, on pathos, and on the sheer human weight of redemption. The presence of Stand Unshaken is not just a mere background musical tone or song, it is the sonic embodiment of Arthur's transformation. And as the sun rises one final time on a man who has lived so long in darkness, the player is left in silence, not triumph. No victory fanfare, no celebratory closure, just a stillness, a mournful tranquility that forces reflection. Arthur's death is not about defeat, it is about acceptance. It is about the rare beauty of a man who, even in his final breaths, chooses to do right, not for reward, but because he finally saw the world and himself clearly. Beneath the gruff voice, the intimidating physique, and the ever-present holster on his hip, Arthur Morgan is not just another outlaw living outside the law, he is a man. A deeply complex, thoughtful, scarred human being grappling with the weight of the life he has led and the man he wants to become. Too often in video games, protagonists are defined by what they do, not who they are. They are avatars of choice, mechanical extensions of the player's intent, emotional vessels for gameplay, but Arthur is different. He is not just the gun you wield or the horse you ride, he is a soul struggling to find meaning. Rockstar didn't simply design a character, they wrote a man with fears, regrets, moments of tenderness, and a slowly evolving conscience. And through this slow unraveling of layers, Arthur emerges as one of the most human and fully realized protagonists in video game history. What makes Arthur's humanity so resonant is the unforced nature of his development. His kindness does not appear overnight, nor is it presented with melodramatic flourish. Instead, it's found in the quiet moments, helping a dying horse on the roadside, sketching a bird journal with unexpected detail, sitting by a fire reflecting on choices made long ago. His voice, hardened by years of survival, softens when he speaks to people like Mary Linton or Jack Marston. His letters, most notably to the ones of Mary penned during his final days, read like an aching confession of a man trying to come to terms with who he used to be and who he wants to be remembered as. These moments aren't side content, they're the core of his character. Arthur's transformation is felt most powerfully not when he's riding into battle, but when he pauses to listen, to observe, and to feel. That emotional depth is what elevates him from compelling to unforgettable. Arthur is also a man who wears guilt like a second skin, and that guilt, layered and personal, manifests in every decision he makes as he nears his end. Whether it's reflecting on the people he's hurt, questioning Dutch's crumbling ideology, or seeing the broken innocence in John Marston's son, Arthur begins to unravel the lies he was raised on. He knows he cannot undo his past, and he knows forgiveness may never come, but what he can do is ensure that someone else, someone better, escapes the cycle of violence that consumed him. His relationship with John becomes the final redemptive arc of his journey, not just because he's trying to save a friend, but because in John and his family, Arthur sees a second chance. Not for himself, but for a legacy worth protecting. This isn't the redemption of a hero, it is the redemption of a man who knows he's dying and refuses to let death come for him before he has done at least one thing truly worth it. Arthur Morgan is not just another name in the vast pantheon of video game protagonists, he is a soul etched into the very fibers of his storytelling within the medium. His journey is not defined solely by bullets fired, missions accomplished, or miles travelled on horseback, but by the profound emotional arc that charts his fall from blind loyalty into reflective clarity and selfless redemption. He represents a rare breed of character, one that evolves not because the plot demands it, but because he himself becomes awakened to the cost of his actions and the weight of his past and the dwindling days he has left to set things right. Through Arthur, Rockstar did not just craft a world to explore, they created a life to understand, a man to grieve, and a legacy that continues to be haunted in the hearts of players long after they leave the campfires of Horseshoe Overlook or the snowy peaks of Coulter behind. His story is not just about being the best gunslinger or the most feared outlaw, it is about learning to be human in a world that so often forgets what that means. The power of Arthur Morgan's narrative lies not just in its scope, but in its genuine sincerity. It doesn't reach for bombastic spectacle or force redemption down your throats with contrived twists. It lets you live it, moment by moment, through a morality system that reflects your choices, through the relationships that you grow and fracture like real friendships, and through an ending that does not conclude a tale but transcends it, with Stand Unshaken echoing like a spiritual anthem and the fading light of dawn casting one last glow on Arthur's withered face. Red Dead Redemption 2 becomes more than just your regular video game. It becomes a requiem for a man who, though fictional, feels as real as any flesh and blood human could. Arthur Morgan dies with his heart full, not of triumph, but of acceptance, grace, and the quiet dignity of a man who finally stood for something greater than himself. His story is not simply played, it is felt, remembered, and revered, and in that remembrance, he rides on, not just in the wilds of the American frontier, but in the hearts of every player, myself included, who dared to walk the long winding path of redemption by his side.
Oh, track of my love.